Hi, and welcome to Lindamood-Bell's Leaders in Literacy webinar. My name is Dave Kivita. I'm Director of Development of Lindamood-Bell for Schools. And Lindamood-Bell for Schools is the division of Lindamood-Bell that partners directly with school districts to provide professional development to teachers as they work with their students. And obviously in top districts and I'm working with districts this year, a lot of them have been discussing planning for learning loss recovery. And what they're going to be doing over the summer and what they'll be doing even into the fall. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity for folks out there to hear directly from some districts that we've worked with in the past who are facing exactly these challenges. Talk a little bit about what their plans are, how it is that they're structuring their summer plans. We'll discuss a little bit about what they've done historically, take a look at a little bit of data. And hopefully you'll walk away with this with a little bit more information to help ground you in your thinking about learning loss recovery. So today we're going to be joined by two professionals from school districts. Unfortunately, one of our folks couldn't make it today. So I'm going to go ahead and have our guests introduce themselves. And Kevin, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Kevin O'Hare. I'm a teacher on special assignment for the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District. I support the Student Support Services Department, which primarily means providing curriculum and instruction support for our teachers. Within our 23 schools across the 3 cities in our district, we use Seeing Stars, visualizing and verbalizing, talkies, and lips to meet the needs of various populations of students. And as a teacher, I was a teacher for the previous 8 years, and for 3, I was able to implement Seeing Stars and visualizing and verbalizing in my classroom setting.
Great, awesome. And Kevin, just to make sure, and I might have missed it if you said it in there, I apologize. Are you mainly at elementary, secondary?
It's across all of our schools, okay. So actually from elementary through secondary. And we have an adult transition program, although we're not using as many of those strategies explicitly there.
Gotcha. Excellent. We're also joined by Kelly Loftin. Kelly, you'd like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kelly Loftin. I've been a special education teacher for 13 years with Lawrence County Schools, all in elementary. And for the past 4 years, I have been using Lindamood-Bell, specifically the Seeing Stars and the visualizing and verbalizing. And thanks to Dave, last year during the pandemic, I got to received the On Cloud 9 training, which was awesome to have that math because we had so much with reading. We needed something with math. And so I work specifically with students with special needs. This year is a little different. The previous years I've been working more resource. This year, due to all the changes and some changes in staffing, I'm currently in a co-taught classroom with special education and regular education students. And then we have a time called What I Need time, and we pull kids during that time. And that's when we specifically work with students from our class that are special needs and regular ed that are struggling learners.
Great. Excellent. And this year has been really, a tough year, obviously, with lots of changing dynamics. And obviously, everything that's since last March to this March really has been forming what people want to do over the summer and how they're thinking about next school year. And Kevin, maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've been seeing in terms of students in Monterey in particular, in terms of student performance and how that compares to previous years.
Yeah, so we've been implementing a distance learning model for up until now in the school year. We've recently had a few populations of students come back and are targeting a larger return in April. But with that model, there's been a little bit less explicit synchronous instructional time. So we've been on an 8 to noon schedule with an A-day, B-day model, which has just reduced the amount of time that some of these services are happening, live and in person or with synchronous instruction. There have been office hours in the afternoon to offset that, but just it's less instructional time than we've had in previous years. So we started the year with about 40% of students on our first diagnostic, testing into the tier 3 area for reading, which means 2 or more grade levels below. That was reduced to 31 at the end of at the second diagnostic, so in the end of quarter 2. So we saw, again, a lot of progress and a lot of growth in that time. We had 27% of students in tier 1. So that's honor at grade level, and that went to 37%. So distance learning proved to be effective, but we still have 30% of our students 2 levels or more below that didn't move out of that tier 3 area. So really wanting to target them with the programs we'll discuss moving forward.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that background. Kelly, how about in Lawrence County? You guys have been operating under, it sounds like, a different model than have in Monterey.
Yeah, we've been in person the entire time. We have only one class per grade level that is learning virtually. However, due to a lot of restrictions, we couldn't really group the kids as heterogeneously as we wanted to, because we had to keep cohorts and know which kids were going to be around other kids and make sure that we could do the contact tracing. So initially, we were not pulling as many kids as we would like to have. We were working within our classrooms on that need. However, we do have an RTI specialist here who was pulling, and was able to keep that going on with the contact tracing. But there was such a great need for our students that he was not able to fill that need, because one person couldn't do as much as what was needed. Yeah. We had a lot of our students in the 40% range that would be functioning below, a year below or behind their grade level. So it was causing a lot of issues within the classroom due to lack of exposure during the pandemic.
Yeah. That is a lot of kids. And so in terms of like moving forward, have you all started to make some plans for what you're going to be doing for summer, Kelly?
Yes. Thankfully, Dr. Hightower, which is our superintendent for instruction, she said that yes, they were looking at the budget and trying to make sure of the number of teachers that could fill the need, and that we would be doing a summer session. Now, I don't know what it will look like. I can tell you what our past looked like. We had 7 teachers it backed down to 6. It was 7 initially, but 6 teachers with roughly 5 children per class. So we had almost 30. We had 28. And we were doing C and Stars and VV. We were not attacking the on Cloud 9, but we were doing C and Stars and VV. So hopefully we will be doing that this summer. We don't have dates yet, but that should be in the budget and working out.
Good. That's great to hear. And Kevin, it sounds like when we talked in the lead up to this webinar that you guys are looking to change a little bit of your summer learning model. Maybe you can talk about what your plans are and how that compares to your previous structures.
Yeah, we're hoping to actually change going into spring. So we do have students returning in person in the afternoons, but they're going to be maintaining the distance learning model that's worked in the mornings. So using those stable groups in the afternoon, we're hoping to kind of model based on the Lindamood-Bell summer model that we've done in the past for our 3-hour afternoon sessions, where there's the lessons being given 3 different times by 3 different staff members, as opposed to what was 4 during our summer sessions, but getting what's essentially 3 days worth of instruction in one day, which again is normally we're able to offer that 1 period per day. So offering 3 days worth of instruction every day to try to really close the gap for those tier 3 students as a kind of a launching pad going from spring into summer, and then continuing that program in summer, which is going to be available to students who won't already be eligible for ESY. So students that are already going to our extended school year program will have access to the similar level of instruction and intervention with their teacher that they normally have during the year, provided that they teach ESY. But we'll also be offering a virtual Lindamood-Bell program, really following that same model, but just extending it by an additional hour and offering that additional hour beyond that of professional development for our staff as well. Great.
Excellent. And, in thinking about ESY and summer instruction, I think it's great that sounds like you're getting some kids who are not necessarily just ESY students to have access to this. And Kelly, I know that historically Lawrence County has had it open to not just ESY kids, but also to the gen ed population of students. Which is great. And maybe you guys can talk a little bit about some of the changes that you all have seen in terms of student progress historically. And obviously the goal of all of this is to improve student learning, but and we can start talking about students, but I also want to be thinking about, in the way I think a lot of districts are trying to take advantage of the summer as a real opportunity for professional development, and professional development like an almost boost for their staff. And then that they are hoping that their staff will continue to be using this as we get to the school year, because of course we don't always get all the kids that we want to have come during the summer who may benefit. And so, Kelly, maybe you want to talk a little bit about what your experience has been like historically the last couple of summers.
Okay, our first summer, it was very interesting because the group of teachers had only had just the training, and we received the box, and we have the training, and we have the manual, and we thought we were ready to go. And we had come back to our classes. This was prior to summer. We had come back to our classes, and everybody was kind of doing it, but not necessarily with fidelity. Because then at summer, we all got the aha moment, and we all said, "Oh my goodness! Now we know how to do it." We had the cool robot over the summer. The kids loved it. We had it both years. But the coolest thing for us was that there was a person. There was a person right there with us that could answer questions right there, readily available. And then at the end of the day, after the children left, we had just a break apart debrief, and we all were able to feed off of each other, ask questions to our leader, and we were able to get information and able to then learn to pace the kids a lot better, because we didn't know how to pace whenever we first started. We just thought that you opened up that kit and you started from A and you ended with Z, and that was it. But we didn't know that, this student has this, and so they're ready. They don't need these CVCs anymore. They're ready for, the two Bibles go walking. Well, now they're ready for diphthongs. Well, now they're ready for multisyllabic. So, we were able to then learn to then come back and do some pacing within our classes, and bring it back for a school year. But the fact that we were able to also do in one day what it took a whole week to do at our school, because when we pull the kids, we're pulling, and we only had 40 minutes in our school day. But whenever we were working with them in the summer, it was one day was a whole week's worth of growth. So we were able to see a lot more growth at one time, like our symbol imagery that came up 14 percentile points, and our word attack that came up 8, accuracy came up almost 8, 7.9, and then that led to a comprehension, because we only had 2 VV groups. Actually, it ended up being 1 because the students were able to move together, but we only had those 5 kids that were in VV out of the 21, and but they still were able to maintain and come up 7 percentile points, but because they were no longer trying to worry and decode, they were then able to read with fluency, and then the comprehension came along with it.
That's great. Yeah, and I remember that. Remember when we provide our coaching virtually now via Zoom, and we've done it that way for a long time. And we used to use those robots that would kind of drive around from one session to another. And now we've moved more to a sort of a Zoom over the laptop model, which is in some ways a little bit easier, even though it's less cool in some aspects. Kevin, I saw you smiling a little bit there as Kelly was talking about learning how to pace students and understanding that she doesn't just have to go A to Z through the kit. Does that kind of mirror what your experience was like as well?
Yeah, it was really similar, and working similarly in a pace that Kelly talked about, where it really represents a week of instruction every day that you're doing that. We had a similar model where, four sessions a week was something we would be able to do during the school year. So offering that every day over the course of 20 days, we're on 10-week quarters. So it's really like offering a semester of, intensive intervention during that time, which was really beneficial for our students. And it moves at a really different pace, doing it that frequently, right, as opposed to week by week. So the gains are really different, and it's interesting to see that way. But also for our teachers, in only teaching this subject during that time and not it being one of the 6 or 7 other courses that they're teaching. So I think that focus and that level of intensity, especially with the support of the staff, really helps them understand what's being done, how it's being paced, and what next steps are, as opposed to just going to the next book in sequence or the next line down the road, how to connect those things. So that was really clear. And then also for students, the fact that they're staying in this intervention model and it's moving really intentionally throughout, as opposed to being asked to go to a social studies class after or a science class and attempt to generalize these skills right after a session. That the entire time that you're getting that semester's worth of intervention, it is really targeted and intentional and just like really carefully curated for students, which is harder to do when you're writing 5 or 6 other lesson plans and all the other demands that are happening during a typical school year.
Yeah. I saw you smiling about that, Kelly. I was thinking, it's such a good point that you bring up, that I remember when I first started with Lindamood-Bell, I worked in the Learning Center. And so if I had 8 hours, I was doing 8 different sessions over the course of a day. And so I would do it and then immediately get to do it again, and immediately get to do it again. And so that just really changes the professional learning, your own skill level, as opposed to, as you all are describing, doing it for 45 minutes with a group and then shifting and going and doing something completely different, not necessarily getting the chance to immediately use those same skills again with a different group of students. Thank you for sharing that. I do think one of the advantages to the summertime, as you all have mentioned a couple times, is the multiple hours within a day, and that they're essentially seeing a week's worth of growth within one day. And that's because, if we think about it in multiple weeks, they're getting almost a year's full of instruction over the course of a couple of weeks. And that's great for the students because they get to see so much growth, and that really builds their energy behind it. And it's great for the teachers too, to see the entire scope and sequence of a program over a short period of time, so that you can get that sort of aha moment and that understanding that sometimes takes getting through the whole slog of a school year before you can access that. And Kelly, I pulled up, thank you for mentioning some data earlier, and I kind of pulled up some of the results from one of the summers where we saw students. And this is on a battery of assessments that we train Lawrence County staff and how to provide to their students. And they're all publicly available, nationally normed assessments that really help them group students effectively. And these kids got about 60 hours of instruction. And the little asterisks down there denote that they were statistically significant changes from pre to post test. And not only that, but were actually very large standard score changes in many of those pieces, in particular in those areas around decoding, leading to really great changes in comprehension. So that whole point. And, I know, Kelly, that really helped build within the district and within students buy-in among the staff and the students. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yes, it did. Because basically in the past, prior to these summers, in the past, the only students that were really receiving Lindamood-Bell instruction were our kids that were struggling learners, that were identified as having an eligibility to receive an IEP. There were a few others that would come in. It was one of those, the situation's more like, well, we kind of think that this kid, he may need you kind of thing is,
Yeah.
And so the teachers had not really bought in. The regular ed teachers and even some of the special ed teachers had not quite bought in to how much it could change. And really some of it was just the way in which they speak and the verbs that they're using that could change a lot of things, especially with the VV and the comprehension. And then just to even do things like air right, they didn't really get it. And then when we were able to come back with the data and show, hey, look, these kids did, like in particular, we had a group that was nothing but 5th graders going to 6th grade that summer, or getting ready to go to 6th grade, that were reading on about a 3rd grade level when they came in there. And they left out reading multisyllabic words and thinking that was the coolest thing to read words like Glepperstanchen and, that were just absolutely nonsense words, but they just thought it was the best thing and they wanted to top the next one. And then also like our group of VV that was also, this group was going from 5th grade into 6th. They were extremely great readers, but they couldn't visualize. And so they grew such an amount and were able to see pictures. And then with the structure words, if you left one out, they would say, "Oh, and you forgot." And so they would be so excited. And it helped us to grow. It helped the teachers teaching it to grow, the teachers seeing it and having those kids come into their class to grow. And the kids obviously grew tremendously.
That's great. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, the model that we use at Lindamood-Bell is to really think about professional development as not just being that initial workshop. And I think both of you have talked about how that initial workshop is great, but it has been historically such an unfair process to say to teachers, I want you to take this 2-day workshop. Here's the materials. Now go. Be on your own and implement. And in some cases, they've been able to make that sort of Herculean lift of doing it. And in other cases, though, teachers sit down and they're trying a new program out with kids and the kids are struggling and the teacher doesn't feel confident about it. And what ends up happening, unfortunately, is that often that kit ends up on a shelf someplace and the training is sort of lost. And so we do think about how there needs to be this real progression in terms of taking teachers through that level 1 workshop, giving them the opportunity for some asynchronous learning on their own. We kind of think about that as level 2, and then level 3 being where we're really getting into those groups with some Lindamood-Bell virtual consultants who are present to see and model lessons for teachers, co-teach with them, become their partner and their collaborator in helping figure out how to write lesson plans and do pacing, and then all the way on up to doing sort of systemic change and thinking about how a district as a whole looks at their students. So thank you both for coming in and taking some time out of your busy days to talk with us. I'm sure that the information that you shared will be useful to folks, and hopefully, if they've got questions, they'll feel comfortable. Our contact information is down there at the bottom if you'd like to reach out. And I don't know, Kevin, if you had anything in closing you kind of wanted to say.
Email is a good way to reach me, so feel free.
Awesome. And Kelly, how about you? Anything you wanted to add at the end?
If you have any thoughts of that this won't work, then just look and just take your time. And even on YouTube, there's several videos where you can watch, and you can see it. And so when you see it in action, it makes such an impact on you and the students.
Great. Awesome. All right. Thank you all for joining us today for this Leaders in Literacy webinar. Feel free to visit our website. We have a whole library of past Leaders in Literacy webinars on different topics. And again, we'll be having more in the future. So feel free to check out the website. We are doing, as I mentioned before, and as we discussed, a lot of professional development around this summer and leading into next school year. So by all means, reach out. We'd love to help figure out a way to partner with you all to help you as you support your students. Thank you again for joining us.